philosophy is in the Christian context, namely the handmaid to theology, an entirely independent standing discipline, but one which, in a Christian context, is ordered to the same thing that theology is, namely to bring us into greater knowledge of God through knowing the world that He has created. And so philosophy, like theology, orders us to God and helps us to attain happiness. My primary area of interest in Thomas focused around questions on the soul. And I think what was guiding that is probably my Dominican formation as well, of wanting to be a good shepherd of souls. And so asking, what's the point of human life? What's important? Why, why are we here? And how do, if there is somewhere that we need to be or that we're supposed to be heading toward, how it is that we get there. Central to that question and undergirding it is, what does it mean to be a human being? And at the heart of that question is, what is the soul? You're going to be missing something if you don't have a really solid metaphysics of what it is to be a human being. And so that's what drove a lot of my questions. After I started my doctoral program at Catholic University, I was very interested in pursuing those questions on the soul. But there was a shift, and I think it's what I just described, namely the importance of recognizing the metaphysical foundations. And so my focus shifted not only from metaphysical foundations on the soul to metaphysics in general, to make sure that I was really solid on the first principles of philosophic knowledge. And so for Thomas, that's the essence-essay distinction, that what something is and its act of existing are not the same in any creature, and that they are identified only in God. The second, perhaps most important distinction that comes down from that is, what is substance? And that's the question that I focused most of my research on. And that's become the topic of my dissertation. What I love about the classroom in general is the excitement of seeing people come to know. And there's whole essays on whether it is possible to teach or what in fact actually happens in teaching. But it's clear that there's a movement. They go from not knowing to knowing. And the excitement that they have is something that carries over and excites me as well. What we start them with in classical mind is a good dose of Plato's Republic and Aristotle's Ethics. So they get a definition of virtue, they get a definition of happiness, and they get at least a reasoned argument why truth must be objective, and that there is such a thing as human nature, and you don't get to make up your decision, your own definition of what happiness is, and then pursue it, but that there is something in fact objective. And they are at least presented with a scenario in which, if you try to come up with your own definition of happiness, it might very well lead to unhappiness. So the sense that virtue, that human nature is something objective, and therefore that excellence for a human being, what the classical definition of virtue, is also objective, is something that they can grasp, and they find the truth very appealing. So it's not just a communication of ideas, but it's a communication of ideas which brings about a change of life.